My name is Maya, and I am 27 years old. 3 days before my birthday celebration, I received an anonymous video that destroyed everything I believed about my family. The recording exposed their hidden scheme to confront me at my own party. Without a second thought, I canceled everything, grabbed essential belongings, and vanished without informing anyone of my destination. The betrayal pierced deeper than any physical wound, because it originated from the individuals who supposedly loved me without conditions. Before I share more of my journey, let me know what part of the world you are watching from, and hit subscribe if you have ever experienced betrayal from your closest people. Life in Seattle had treated me well. I worked as a creative director for an innovative advertising agency in the downtown district, developing campaigns for businesses ranging from neighborhood bookstores to emerging technology companies. My living space was modest, but ideally situated in a lively district, featuring historic buildings, painted in vibrant shades, and independent coffeehouses lining every street. Most significantly, my closest companion Riley lived merely 15 minutes away by public transportation. We connected during our university years, and had remained inseparable since that time. Riley was the individual I contacted for everything from wardrobe consultations to emotional crises. She understood me better than anyone else on earth. My family, conversely, resided on the opposite side of the water in a residential area where I spent my childhood years. We appeared to be what society would label a conventional American household from the outside looking in. But underneath that meticulously maintained facade existed intricate relationships that had influenced my existence in ways I was just starting to comprehend. My mother, Patricia, was the unquestioned authority figure of our household. Everything centered around her perspectives, her timetables, and her conception of proper conduct. She orchestrated our family dynamics like a business executive with exhaustive strategies for every gathering and particular requirements for each relative. Nothing ever transpired without her authorization, and deviation from her arrangements was addressed with indirect hostile remarks or direct condemnation. She possessed a gift for communicating her disapproval through a mere elevation of her eyebrow or minute adjustment in vocal tone. My father Richard existed predominantly in her shadow, an investment consultant who devoted most of his existence avoiding confrontation. He discovered it simpler to comply with whatever Patricia desired than to voice his independent thoughts. I could enumerate on a single hand the occasions I had witnessed him challenge her, and even those uncommon instances concluded with him ultimately surrendering to preserve harmony. He cared for us in his reserved manner, but that affection never manifested as protection from my mother's domineering character. Jennifer, my older sister by 3 years, was the favored offspring. She adhered to our mother's existence blueprint flawlessly, becoming a prosperous commercial lawyer, wedding an appropriate gentleman from a respectable background, and delivering 2 ideal grandchildren precisely according to schedule. She and my mother maintained a unique connection, regularly sharing conspiratorial expressions when they believed I was making inadequate life decisions. Jennifer had perpetually been rivalrous toward me, but in refined ways that rendered me seeming paranoid if I mentioned them. Maya always was the overly emotional one, they would state, with a grin that never quite connected with their eyes. My younger sibling, Marcus, appeared distinct initially. 2 years my junior, he had consistently been the family comedian, dissolving tense circumstances with perfectly timed wit and appearing to authentically appreciate my presence. We bonded over a passion for unknown alternative musicians and unconventional cinema. Yet, there had perpetually been something faintly wrong about our connection that I could never precisely identify. He would vanish into confidential dialogues with my mother and surface viewing me differently. I had chalked it up to ordinary family patterns, but reflecting back, I should have given it greater consideration. The sole individual who ever genuinely appeared to perceive me was my Uncle Frederick, my father's elder sibling, the outcast of the family, who never established a marriage and explored the globe as a photographer. Frederick was regarded with a combination of intrigue and criticism by the remaining family members. Whenever he arrived, he presented unusual presence and more unusual narratives, consistently dedicating additional time to discuss with me regarding my artistic work and ambitions. My mother accepted him because he was blood, but she communicated clearly she viewed him as a negative influence. Not everybody should emulate Frederick's model, she would remark pointedly after his departures. Certain individuals need to mature and embrace accountability. My early years' recollections were saturated with refined patterns of judgment masked as worry. When I secured second position in an artistic contest at age 12, my mother stated, "Well, at minimum, you engaged." Jennifer consistently secured first position in her academic competitions. When I received admission to creative school with a partial grant, the reaction was, "That is pleasant, but it is regrettable you could not obtain complete funding like your sister achieved for law school." Minor remarks, perpetual evaluations, consistently leaving me sensing somewhat insufficient. Birthday celebrations in our household were intricate productions orchestrated thoroughly by my mother. My birthdays specifically appeared to transform into occasions for enhancement conversations. On my 16th birthday, my mother presented me a membership to a wellness publication with a worried discussion regarding my health. On my 21st, my family organized what they termed a fashion rescue, where they substituted my complete closet with garments my mother considered more suitable. Each festivity arrived with obligations connected, but I had persuaded myself that this was standard, that this was affection. For my approaching 28th birthday, I had ultimately convinced my mother to permit me to coordinate the gathering at my residence. It had required months of discussion with her, expressing apprehensions about everything from automobile parking to my restricted hosting capacity, but ultimately she had agreed. I perceived it as a minor triumph in confirming my autonomy, an opportunity to invite my family into my environment on my conditions. For the first time, I had dedicated weeks organizing the ideal refreshments, adorning my residence, and even producing personalized invitations featuring my personal illustrations. The attendee roster comprised my direct family, several relatives, Uncle Frederick, if he could return from his most recent journey to Norway, and a selection of close companions, including Riley. 3 weeks preceding the celebration, I obtained a substantial advancement at work. My concepts for a significant technology corporation initiative had been chosen above those from considerably more experienced designers, and my supervisor had summoned me into her workspace to individually congratulate me on my creative methodology. I was thrilled and instantly contacted my family to communicate the information. "That sounds pleasant, sweetheart," my mother had responded distractedly. Discussing work, Jennifer just secured a significant litigation that was highlighted in the professional publication. "Nice one, sis," Marcus had replied. "Hey, I must depart. Mom is on the alternate line." My father had been marginally more excited, but rapidly altered the discussion to inquire if I was continuing to prepare his preferred vanilla cake for the birthday gathering. Only Riley had appropriately celebrated with me appearing at my residence with sparkling wine and remaining late listening to me discuss my concepts for upcoming ventures. The distinction between her response and my family's had hurt, but I dismissed it as I perpetually did. Reflecting back, I should have observed the expanding separation between my family and me throughout the previous year. Telephone communications had become briefer and more unfocused. Family meals featured additional questions regarding my individual existence with refined recommendations for enhancement. My mother had initiated sending me content regarding fitness routines, monetary administration, and connection guidance with helpful suggestions that felt progressively like assessments. "There is a wonderful podcast regarding work-life equilibrium you should investigate," she would text. "Or have you considered joining one of those professional networking associations?" Jennifer met numerous valuable contacts through hers. The concealed message was perpetually present. I was not accomplishing sufficiently. I was not advancing rapidly enough. I was not transforming into the individual she had imagined. But families are intricate, and I had become skilled at navigating these relationships. I concentrated on the affirmative elements. The rare occasions when my father would telephone merely to inquire how my day proceeded, or when Marcus would transmit me an amusing meme that demonstrated he was contemplating me. I convinced myself that the criticism originated from concern, that the perpetual evaluations were their manner of motivating me to be superior. The warning indicators were present if I had been prepared to observe them. 2 months before my birthday, during a family meal, I had referenced casually that I was contemplating obtaining a cat. My mother's reaction had been instant and emphatic. "Maya, that is such an irresponsible concept. Pets are enormous obligations. Do you genuinely believe you are prepared for that type of dedication?" Before I could reply, Jennifer had contributed, "Plus, what if you encounter someone and they have sensitivities? You would be restricting your relationship possibilities." Marcus had attempted to be encouraging. "Cats are cool," he had stated. But then my mother had glanced at him and he had incorporated, "But yeah, possibly wait until your existence is more secure." My father had remained silent, concentrating on his food. The discussion had proceeded to additional subjects, but the communication was transparent. My selections were questionable. My judgment was deficient. I required their supervision to navigate even fundamental life determinations. I had departed that meal experiencing diminished and criticized, but I had compartmentalized those sensations as I consistently did. 3 days before my birthday, everything transformed. I was resting on my sofa, examining social media after an extended day at work, when my telephone vibrated with a notification. Unknown transmitter, no title, just a video attachment. My initial response was to dismiss it as spam, but something caused me to access it. The video quality was moderate, clearly recorded covertly. The camera perspective was positioned low, somewhat concealed, as though someone had concealed their device on a bookshelf or positioned it behind a decorative item. But the sound was exceptionally clear. It was recorded in my parents' living area, the recognizable furniture and family portraits evident in the background. And there, assembled on the couches, were my mother, father, Jennifer, and Marcus. Without me, they were conducting what appeared to be a household assembly. My mother was positioned at the center, as she perpetually was, with a notepad before her. This felt organized, strategic. All right, so we are all comprehending regarding the strategy? My mother's voice emerged distinctly through my telephone speaker. We require absolute clarity on the approach. Jennifer, you will discuss the economic instability of creative professions and present information on more secure career alternatives. Marcus, you will discuss the significance of establishing professional networks and adult accountability. Harold will address relationship patterns and the necessity to concentrate on discovering a suitable companion, and I will connect everything together with the larger image regarding her future. And if she becomes defensive? Jennifer questioned. When she becomes defensive, my mother rectified. Maya consistently reacts emotionally when confronted with reality. That is portion of her difficulty. She requires to develop tougher and acknowledge that sometimes affection means communicating harsh truths. We remain composed and consistent, my father stated, appearing to read from the identical script. We clarify this originates from affection and concern. We present it as the family assembling to assist her before it is too late. Too late for what precisely? Marcus's vocal tone had an advantage I had never perceived before. Too late before she squanders her complete existence on unrealistic fantasies, my mother responded impatiently. Marcus, I require you concentrated. This is significant. Your sister requires us to be robust for her, even if she does not comprehend it presently. There was quietness, and then Marcus stated, Understood. I am committed. But something in his tone sounded incorrect, constrained. The birthday gathering Friday evening is merely the preparation, Jennifer stated. We act ordinary, festive. We do not desire to generate her suspicious before Sunday. Then Saturday evening, we validate everybody recognizes to arrive at 10 a.m. Sunday for the intervention. We inform Maya it is a family breakfast, maintain her uninformed until everybody is assembled. And we have the pamphlets prepared? My mother inquired. Pamphlets? My father sounded confused. The vocational guidance pamphlets I published, my mother clarified with strained tolerance, demonstrating realistic career alternatives for someone with Maya's competencies. We distribute those during the intervention to provide her tangible subsequent actions. This feels extremely coordinated, my father stated quietly. That is because it is organized, Harold, my mother responded sharply. This is not some informal discussion. This is an intervention to rescue our daughter from herself. It necessitates structure. What if she declines to hear? Marcus inquired. She will hear because she will not have a selection, Jennifer stated firmly. We are not requesting her permission. We are informing her that her present pathway is unsuitable and transformations require occurrence. And if she attempts to depart? My father's voice. Where will she proceed? My mother responded. This is her family. We are executing this because we love her. Ultimately, she will comprehend that. There was additional discussion regarding logistics, regarding who would state what and when, regarding contingency strategies if I became irrational. They discussed me like I was an issue to resolve, an undertaking to oversee. Not an individual, not their daughter, an inconvenience. The video concluded abruptly, the screen transforming black. I remained there on my sofa, telephone trembling in my grasp, experiencing like the ground had vanished beneath me. This was not merely a betrayal. This was a coordinated assault on everything I was, everything I had labored to construct. They were not organizing to celebrate me. They were organizing to dismantle me. The birthday gathering was a deception, a method to assemble everybody so they could ambush me with their collective criticism and requirements. The realization struck me in surges. Every supportive remark my mother had made regarding permitting me to coordinate the gathering at my residence, every apparently encouraging text from Jennifer, every humorous message from Marcus, it had all been section of this strategy. They had been orchestrating behind my back for weeks, perhaps months, assembling their litigation against my existence like I was on judgment. I experienced nauseated, deceived, enraged, but primarily, I experienced clarity. For the initial time in my existence, I perceived them precisely for what they were, not imperfect individuals who loved me inadequately, but individuals who perceived me as a disappointment, a humiliation, something to repair or reshape until I accommodated their conception of acceptable. The affection they stated they possessed was conditional. It necessitated me to be somebody I was not. It necessitated me to relinquish everything that made me myself, and I was completed. I was completed attempting to gain approval I would never obtain, completed diminishing myself to create them comfortable, completed accepting their criticism as concern. That evening I did not sleep. I remained at my compact kitchen table contemplating my alternatives. I could attend the gathering, pretend I comprehended nothing, permit them to execute their intervention. I could confront them instantly, communicate them I understood their strategy. I could attempt to clarify, to protect my selections, to create them comprehend. But profound within, I recognized the reality. No quantity of clarification would transform their perspective. They had determined who I should be, and nothing I stated would convince them that the individual I actually was constituted enough. By sunrise, I had formulated my determination. I was departing, not merely the gathering, everything. I would vanish from their existence as completely as they had disregarded my value in theirs. I initiated with practical matters. I contacted my supervisor and clarified I required to utilize some accumulated leave days instantly, citing a family crisis which was not completely false. She was comprehending, informing me to take the time I necessitated. Then I contacted Riley. She responded on the second tone, her voice drowsy. "Maya, it is 6 a.m. Is everything acceptable? Can you arrive over?" My vocal tone fractured despite my endeavor to maintain it steady. "I require assistance. I am departing instantly." She arrived 27 minutes afterward, still wearing sleeping clothes, her expression filled with worry. I displayed her the video without clarification, observed her expression transform from confusion to shock to fury as she perceived my family organizing my public humiliation. When it concluded, she appeared at me with tears in her eyes. "Maya, I am so sorry. This is horrific. I am departing," I informed her. "Departing the gathering?" "Departing everything. The gathering. This city. Them. I cannot exist here anymore, Riley. I cannot continue pretending this is ordinary or acceptable or something I can repair. I require to depart." She did not attempt to persuade me differently. That is how I recognized she was genuine family. The type you select rather than the type you are assigned. "What do you require from me?" "Assist me pack. Assist me discover some place to proceed. And please do not inform anybody where I am." We dedicated that complete day creating arrangements. Riley had a companion in Portland who was seeking a flatmate. One telephone call later, I possessed a destination. We packed my most significant possessions, my garments and artwork materials, and the few belongings that genuinely mattered. Everything else could remain. I was not fleeing. I was liberating myself. By late afternoon, my vehicle was loaded. I had composed a brief communication to my supervisor, clarifying I would not be returning, that individual circumstances necessitated instant relocation. I had transferred funds to cover the remaining months on my lease. I had modified my telephone number, and I had composed one final text communication to my family, scheduled to transmit after I was already hours away. The communication was brief. "I am conscious of the intervention you organized for Sunday. I am conscious you perceive me as a disappointment and my existence as something necessitating correction. I will not be attending the gathering Friday or any future family gathering. I am departing, and I do not desire contact. Please respect this determination." I did not clarify, did not defend, did not provide them the conclusion they would undoubtedly desire. Sometimes the most powerful statement you can create is simply declining to participate. I departed Seattle at dusk, observing the city illuminations fade in my rearview mirror. Riley accompanied me for the initial hour, her vehicle trailing mine until we contacted the state boundary. We halted at a rest area for a final embrace. "You are executing the correct action," she informed me, grasping me firmly. "And I am merely a telephone call away, regardless of where you are." "I recognize. Thank you for perceiving me, Riley, for genuinely perceiving me. That is what a genuine family executes," she stated. "And Maya, you are not a disappointment. You are remarkable precisely as you are." I operated the remaining journey to Portland with tears flowing down my features, but they were not entirely sorrowful tears. They were additionally tears of liberation, of ultimately selecting myself, of declining to transport the burden of expectations that were never mine to satisfy. I reached Portland near midnight. My new flatmate, a compassionate woman designated Kara who operated at a botanical garden, assisted me transport my belongings into the modest but charming residence. "You can organize tomorrow," she stated kindly, observing my fatigue. Sleep initially, but sleep did not arrive readily. I rested in an unfamiliar bed in an unfamiliar city, contemplating what was occurring back in Seattle. My scheduled text would have been transmitted hours ago. They would recognize now. I could envision the confusion, the fury, the frantic telephone calls to my disconnected number. Would they comprehend why? Would they perceive what they had executed? Probably not. Individuals like my mother rarely acknowledge their component in deteriorated relationships. It is perpetually somebody else's deficiency, somebody else's excessive sensitivity. But that was no longer my concern. I was completed attempting to create them comprehend. I was completed requiring their validation. For the initial time in my existence, I was complimentary. The subsequent weeks were simultaneously the most challenging and most liberating of my existence. I discovered work at a modest design studio in Portland, utilizing my portfolio and references from my previous employment. The compensation was marginally reduced, but the environment was cooperative and innovative in ways my previous workplace had never been. My colleagues actually valued my concepts, requested my perspective, treated me like an equal contributor rather than someone who necessitated perpetual enhancement. Kara became a companion rapidly. She possessed this relaxed, accepting energy that created our distributed residence feel secure. We would prepare meals together, observe old films, discuss our days without criticism or concealed plans. It was ordinary in the most wonderful manner. Riley visited twice that initial month, bringing additional belongings I'd neglected and merely being present when I necessitated a familiar feature. But she additionally encouraged me to construct new relationships, to not isolate myself completely. "You walked away from toxic individuals," she reminded me. "Do not permit their toxicity create you anxious of all relationships." She was correct. Gradually, I initiated opening up. I joined a community artistic group that assembled weekly to work on ventures together. I commenced attending a yoga class at a neighboring studio. Minor connections that progressively constructed into genuine friendships founded on mutual respect and acceptance. But the nocturnal were challenging. That is when the guilt would emerge, insidious and persistent. Had I overreacted? Should I have provided them an opportunity to clarify? Were they genuinely attempting to assist me in their distorted manner? These thoughts would rotate through my brain, creating me question everything. During one especially difficult nocturnal, I contacted Riley at 2 a.m. "Did I execute the correct action?" I inquired when she responded. "They are my family. Perhaps I should have attempted to converse to them, to create them comprehend." "Maya." Her vocal tone was tender but firm. "Did you observe that video? Did you perceive them planning to ambush you? Discussing you like you were a disappointing venture rather than an individual they love?" "Yes, but no buts. That was not affection. That was manipulation and control. Authentic affection does not necessitate you to transform into somebody else. Authentic affection accepts you as you are." I merely experienced guilty, like I relinquished too readily. "You did not relinquish. You liberated yourself. There is a distinction." Her words assisted, but the guilt remained. That is the challenging element regarding toxic family relationships. They program you to experience guilty for prioritizing yourself, to perceive boundaries as selfishness. Unlearning that programming required time. I commenced therapy with a counselor designated Dr. Bennett, who concentrated on family dynamics. In our initial session, I displayed her the video. "What you witnessed," she stated after it concluded, "was not concern. That was control masked as concern. There is a distinction, and it is significant." "But they believe they are assisting me," I argued, still clinging to that remaining hope. What individuals believe their motivations are, and what their behaviors genuinely communicate, can be entirely distinct, Dr. Bennett clarified. Your family organized an intervention not because they were worried regarding your welfare, but because your selections did not align with their expectations. That is regarding their necessity for control, not regarding your necessity for assistance. Throughout our sessions, I commenced unraveling patterns that had existed my complete existence. The perpetual comparisons to Jennifer, the refined criticisms disguised as guidance, the manner my accomplishments were perpetually minimized while my shortcomings were amplified. It was not affection. It was conditional acceptance founded on compliance. Separation from toxic family constituents is not relinquishing on them, Dr. Bennett informed me during one session. It is declining to relinquish on yourself. Those words became my foundation during the challenging days. 2 months after I departed, my telephone commenced receiving calls from unfamiliar numbers. I never responded them, but occasionally I would hear the voicemails, my mother's vocal tone, alternating between concerned and indignant. Maya, this is ridiculous. You are behaving like a child. We are your family. You cannot merely run away whenever matters become challenging. Contact me instantly. Jennifer's communications were more calculated. Maya, I comprehend you are disturbed, but you are creating this harder than it necessitates to be. We were merely attempting to assist you. Can we discuss this like adults? Marcus's voicemails were distinct. Hey Maya, it is me. I do not completely comprehend what occurred, but I am anxious regarding you. If you desire to discuss, I am here. No criticism, I promise. I merely miss my sister. His communications created me hesitate. Marcus had perpetually been the most tolerable of them, but I recalled his vocal tone in that video, concurring to their strategy. Possibly he was genuine presently. Possibly he was merely another component of their strategy to extract me back. I could not risk discovering which. 3 months in, they located my new employment. I do not recognize how. Possibly they hired someone to track me. Possibly they merely called every design studio in Portland. My supervisor informed me someone asserting to be my mother had telephoned, requesting to communicate with me. I informed her you were not accessible and could not be disturbed during work hours, my supervisor stated. I desired to verify with you initially before providing any information. Are you acceptable? I valued her consideration, her respect for my boundaries. I am managing a challenging family circumstance, I clarified. If anybody contacts requesting regarding me, please inform them I am not accessible, and you cannot provide information regarding employees. I am sorry to request this. You do not require to apologize. Everyone deserves boundaries, especially with family. I will communicate the team. That she did not interrogate, did not demand clarification or create me justify my requirements, created me desire to cry with relief. This was how wholesome relationships functioned. With respect, with trust. My birthday arrived, the one I should have celebrated with that gathering. Instead, I dedicated it exploring Portland, wandering through bookstores and art galleries, consuming at a tiny ramen restaurant that became one of my beloved locations. Riley flew in to celebrate with me, bringing a homemade cake and a present she had obviously dedicated hours selecting. To Maya, she raised her glass that evening over dinner, who had the courage to select herself, who recognized her value when others did not, who is constructing an existence of authenticity and freedom. I am honored to be your companion. It was the most genuine birthday celebration I had ever experienced. No concealed plans, no ulterior motivations, just authentic connection and celebration. As fall transformed to winter, I commenced experiencing stable in my new existence. The abrupt episodes of guilt became less regular. The nervousness regarding them discovering me decreased. I was constructing something genuine here. An existence founded on who I actually was, rather than who somebody else believed I should be. That did not indicate I did not possess challenging days. Holidays were especially difficult. I observed social media photographs of family gatherings I was no longer a component of. Jennifer's youngsters developing up without comprehending their aunt. My father appearing older in the images, more exhausted. Those moments harmed. Complicated relationships do not become uncomplicated merely because you distance yourself. The affection does not merely disappear. You merely recognize it is inadequate foundation to construct a wholesome relationship upon. For Thanksgiving, Kara invited me to her family's gathering. They were warm and welcoming, requesting regarding my work and interests without criticism or concealed plans. Her mother even requested if I would be interested in creating some illustrations for her community garden venture. It was foreign, being treated with such spontaneous respect and interest. But it was additionally therapeutic, demonstrating me that families could function differently, that not all relationships were founded on control and conditional affection. December introduced the initial actual attempt at reconciliation. A letter reached, transmitted to my workplace. It was from my father, handwritten on his business stationery. Dear Maya, I recognize you do not desire contact, and I am respecting that by not telephoning or appearing unannounced. But I desired you to recognize that I have commenced therapy. Your departure created me understand patterns in our family that I had been avoiding for excessively long. I am not composing to pressure you to return, or to defend what occurred. I merely desired you to recognize that you were correct. Regarding the control, regarding the conditional acceptance, regarding all of it. I am operating on myself, and I anticipate someday, if you are ever prepared, we might communicate. But only when you are prepared. I affection you and I am sorry, Dad. I read that letter 20 times, seeking concealed manipulation, ulterior motivations, but it appeared genuine. Possibly he was genuinely attempting to transform. Possibly my departure had been the catalyst he necessitated. But I was not prepared, not yet. The wound was too recent. The patterns too thoroughly established. One apology, even an apparently genuine one, could not reconstruct what had been deteriorated throughout decades. I filed the letter away and continued concentrating on my healing. Winter transformed to spring. I had been in Portland for 9 months, and it ultimately experienced like home. I had been elevated at work, my designs receiving recognition and appreciation. I had cultivated genuine friendships with individuals who valued me for who I was. I had commenced dating casually, exploring connections without the burden of family expectations, influencing every decision. And then, on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon, Marcus appeared at my workplace. I was departing for the day when I observed him positioned by my vehicle, hands in pockets, appearing anxious. He appeared distinct, thinner, more exhausted, older than he should at 25. Before you operate or scream or contact security, he stated instantly, please merely listen for 2 minutes. If you desire me to depart after that, I will, and I will never disturb you again. Every response in my body shouted to run, but something in his expression, actual regret and pain, created me hesitate. 2 minutes, I stated, crossing my arms. The timepiece is operating. I am sorry, he stated instantly, for the intervention strategy, for concurring to it, for not defending you when I should have. You were correct to depart, regarding everything. How did you discover me? Does it matter? Yes. I employed the identical investigator Mom utilized. But Maya, I am not here for them. I am here because you are my sister, and I lost you, and I require you to recognize I ultimately comprehend what occurred. You comprehend now, I stated, not bothering to conceal my cynicism. How convenient. After I have reconstructed my complete existence without you. You are correct to be furious, he stated. I would be too. But Maya, observing you depart, observing the family implode afterward, it created me realize matters I had been avoiding. I was not the comic diffusing tension. I was the enabler, assisting Mom manipulate circumstances by creating everybody laugh off the toxicity. Despite myself, I was listening. After you departed, it all descended separately. Jennifer and Mom initiated quarreling regarding whose deficiency it was. Dad withdrew completely, and I was positioned there in the center of it, ultimately perceiving the dysfunction without you there to consume the concentrate. That is not my obligation to repair, I stated, though my vocal tone was less sharp. I recognize I am not requesting you to repair anything. I am merely here to communicate you that I perceive it now. The control, the conditional affection, the manner we were all participating in creating you experience inadequate, and I am sorry. Tears were flowing down his features now, and despite everything, I experienced my resolution wavering. This was Marcus, my brother, who had instructed me to appreciate music and films, who had created me laugh during challenging times. But he had additionally deceived me, had participated in their strategy. What do you desire from me? I inquired ultimately. Nothing, he stated. I merely necessitated you to recognize I am sorry, and that I am operating on myself, like Dad is. Therapy. Establishing boundaries with Mom. Attempting to become someone worthy of being your brother again, but only if you ever desire that. I do not recognize if I can trust you, I admitted. You should not, he stated. Not presently. I have not obtained it. But perhaps someday, if you are prepared, we could attempt. No pressure, no expectations. Merely possibly, ultimately, something genuine. He provided me a fragment of paper with a telephone number. This is my new number. Mom does not possess it. Jennifer does not possess it. It is merely mine. If you ever desire to communicate, or even merely text to inform me to permanently leave you alone, I will listen. Whatever you require. Then he departed, vanished before I could respond. I remained there in the parking area, grasping that fragment of paper, experiencing everything I had labored to compartmentalize flooding back. That nocturnal, I contacted Dr. Bennett for a crisis session. He appeared genuine, I informed her, but I do not recognize if I am perceiving it clearly, or if I merely desire to trust him. Both can be accurate, she stated. He can be genuine in his regret, and you can continue necessitate distance. Forgiveness and reconciliation are distinct matters. You can forgive someone without permitting them back into your existence, or you can sustain boundaries while gradually exploring reconnection. Neither is incorrect. How do I recognize what is correct? You listen to yourself, to your necessities, to what serves your healing, not to guilt, not to what you believe you should execute, but to what genuinely experiences secure. That guidance became my compass. Throughout the subsequent weeks, I contemplated Marcus's visit perpetually. Portion of me desired to contact, to investigate if reconstruction was possible. Portion of me was frightened that any contact would unravel the progress I had created. Ultimately, I selected a middle route. I transmitted a text communication to his new number. I obtained your apology. I am not prepared for additional presently, but I valued you hearing. Possibly someday we can communicate. Merely not today. His response arrived an hour afterward. Understood. Take all the time you necessitate. I will be here if you ultimately desire to attempt. Affection you, sis. That interchange, minor as it was, experienced like a possible initial step. Not toward reconciling with my family as they had been, but possibly toward constructing something new with the constituents who were genuinely prepared to transform. Spring transformed to summer. I celebrated my 29th birthday with my Portland companions, executing a climbing journey accompanied by an outdoor dinner. Kara organized a surprise gathering at our residence, inviting the artistic group and some co-workers. It was modest and ideal, and absolutely absent of concealed plans. Riley managed to attend again, and this time she introduced her new girlfriend, someone she had encountered at a photography exhibition. You appear genuinely joyous, Riley informed me that evening as we remained on the balcony observing the stars. I am, I understood, and it was authentic. I do not indicate I have worked on everything. I continue to possess challenging days, but I am constructing something genuine here, something that is mine. That is all that matters, she stated. That summer, I obtained another letter from my father. He composed regarding his therapy progress, regarding challenging discussions he was having with my mother regarding patterns in their marriage. He did not request anything from me, merely distributed his journey. I valued that. The absence of pressure, the respect for my space. I composed back ultimately. A concise letter acknowledging his advancement and communicating to him I valued his respect for my boundaries. It was not forgiveness, not reconciliation, but it was a tiny entrance opening. Possibly someday there would be additional, but only when I was prepared. Marcus and I commenced communicating occasionally. Brief texts, never regarding the family drama, merely concerning music or films or arbitrary thoughts. It was cautious and uncertain, but it was something. A modest thread of connection that did not necessitate me to sacrifice my boundaries. That was the essential distinction. With both Marcus and my father, they were permitting me to establish the conditions. They were respecting my requirements instead of demanding I accommodate theirs. That was the foundation upon which reconstruction might ultimately be possible. Emphasis on might. I was not creating promises. My mother and Jennifer never contacted personally. I heard through Marcus that they were indignant regarding my refusal to forgive. that they perceived me as excessively sensitive and dramatic. That information, strangely, assisted. It validated that my determination to sustain distance was correct. They had not transformed. They did not comprehend what they had executed incorrect. And I was not sacrificing my harmony to continue attempting to create them comprehend. As fall arrived again, signaling a complete year since I had departed Seattle, I discovered myself reflecting on everything that had transformed. I had lost a family, or rather, I had departed a toxic environment that had never genuinely experienced like family. But I had obtained self-respect, authentic friendships, an existence that felt genuine. The barter was worth it. That did not indicate it did not hurt. Intricate relationships do not become uncomplicated merely because you establish boundaries. The grief does not merely vanish because you comprehend intellectually that you executed the correct action. But the grief was controllable now. It did not dominate me. It was merely portion of the landscape of my existence, something I had discovered. To transport without permitting it determine my route. One October afternoon, I was operating on a design venture in my preferred cafe when my telephone rang. Unknown number from a Seattle area designation. I almost did not respond it, but something created me touch the green button. Hello? Maya? It is Uncle Frederick. My core leaped. I had not communicated to my uncle since departing, had not recognized how to contact him without risking the information transmitting back to my mother. Uncle Frederick, I inhaled. How did you obtain my number? Your brother Marcus, he stated. He communicated me what occurred. All of it. And Maya, I am so sorry. Sorry for what they organized. Sorry I was not there to halt it. Sorry it required you departing for anyone to recognize how badly they were treating you. Tears initiated forming in my eyes. You perpetually perceived me, I stated softly. You were the merely one who perpetually, genuinely perceived me. I should have executed additional, he stated. Should have communicated up more strongly about their behavior throughout the years. But I was a coward, anxious of being isolated further from the family. I regret that presently. We discussed for hours. He informed me regarding his disappointment at what had occurred, regarding his independent confrontations with my mother regarding her controlling behavior. He communicated me he was honored of me for possessing the courage to depart. You executed what I never could, he stated. You selected yourself over family acceptance. That requires enormous strength. It did not experience like strength, I admitted. It experienced like survival. Sometimes those are the identical action, he stated. Listen, I am visiting Portland subsequent month for a photography exhibition. Could I observe you? Merely us. No family drama. I would affection to perceive your new existence, your artwork. I would affection that, I stated, and I indicated it. Uncle Frederick's visit became a highlight of that month. He arrived to my residence, greeted Kara, admired my modest studio space where I operated on individual ventures. We dedicated a day exploring Portland together, photographing graffiti art and unusual architecture. He experienced my genuine family more than the individuals I distributed DNA with. Throughout dinner that nocturnal, he presented me a present, a small photograph, framed superbly. It was of me at age 8, completely absorbed in painting something, my features focused and joyous. I captured this years ago, he stated. You were constantly most yourself when you were producing art. I desired you to possess a reminder of that girl, the one who understood who she was before anybody informed her it was not adequate. I commenced, crying right there in the cafe, not from sadness but from being perceived so completely, so genuinely. The relationships with Marcus and my father continued gradually developing. Marcus visited Portland once, a short weekend journey where we wandered around the city and commenced reconstructing what had been deteriorated. It was uncomfortable. Occasionally the burden of history positioning between us, but there were additionally occasions of actual connection, glimpses of what a genuine sibling relationship might appear like. My father and I graduated to occasional telephone communications. He never pressed, never requested when I would visit, or when matters could return to ordinary. He appeared to ultimately comprehend there was no returning to how matters were, because how matters were had been the difficulty. With my mother and Jennifer, the silence persisted. I received second-hand information through Marcus that they perceived themselves as the genuine victims, betrayed by my selfishness and excessive sensitivity. They had constructed a narrative where I was the villain and they were the martyrs. That was acceptable. I no longer necessitated their validation or comprehension. As winter approached my second year in Portland, I discovered myself ultimately experiencing like I was not merely surviving, but genuinely prospering. My design profession was succeeding. My friendships were profound and genuine. I had commenced dating someone, Alex, who I encountered through the artistic group. It was premature, but it experienced wholesome in ways my previous relationships never had. Alex did not attempt to repair me or enhance me. They merely valued me for who I was. What a revelation that was. On Christmas Eve, I received a package. Inside was a sketchbook, high-quality paper, and a stunning leather cover. The note stated simply, "For your continued creativity, with affection and respect for who you are. Dad and Frederick." The terminology mattered. Respect for who I was, not who they desired me to be. That was the distinction between toxic affection and genuine affection. As I contemplated my journey throughout the previous 2 years, I understood I had not lost my family. I had lost individuals who never genuinely functioned like family, and in exchange, I had obtained something far more valuable. Myself. The capacity to exist genuinely, without perpetual criticism or conditional affection. Relationships founded on mutual respect instead of control. An existence constructed on my conditions, reflecting my values and aspirations. Did I still possess moments of grief? Completely. Did I occasionally contemplate what holidays or family gatherings appeared like without me? Yes. Did portion of me continue desire that my mother and Jennifer would ultimately comprehend and apologize genuinely? Possibly. But those emotions no longer dominated me. They were merely portion of the intricate landscape of being human, of possessing a history that influenced but did not determine your future. Standing in my Portland residence on that Christmas Eve, observing the illuminations glimmer on the tree Kara and I had decorated, I experienced something I had never genuinely experienced in that Seattle household where I developed up. I experienced home, not because of the physical space, but because I was ultimately home within myself, comfortable in my personality, no longer twisting to accommodate somebody else's expectations. The journey had been painful, the loss is genuine, but what I had obtained, self-acceptance and authentic connection, was immeasurable. As I opened that stunning sketchbook and perceived those blank pages waiting to be occupied with my creativity, I understood this was my existence presently. Not flawless, not without complicated emotions, but mine, completely authentically mine. And for the initial time in my existence, that was more than sufficient. It was everything. Sometimes affection indicates departing. Sometimes boundaries are the most compassionate action you can execute, both for yourself and ultimately for others. And sometimes the bravest action is merely declining to be tiny anymore, declining to accept less than you deserve. If you have experienced similar struggles with family dynamics, if you have ever experienced caught between affection and self-preservation, recognize you are not solitary. Establishing boundaries with family is one of the most challenging actions we can execute because we are programmed from childhood to prioritize family above everything. But your welfare matters. Your authenticity matters. You matter. To anybody watching who is contemplating whether to establish boundaries or distance themselves from toxic relationships, I observe you. It is frightening. It will be painful. You will experience guilt. But on the opposite side of that fear and pain is liberty. The liberty to be yourself without apology. The liberty to construct relationships founded on authentic acceptance. The liberty to recognize your value does not depend on anybody else's validation. Thank you for listening to my journey. If this narrative resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and distribute it with someone who might necessitate the reminder that selecting yourself is not selfish. It is survival. And sometimes it is the merely route to ultimately flourish. Remember, sometimes the most significant affection you can provide yourself is the bravery to depart what diminishes you and the patience to construct what celebrates you.